So I grew up in a generational gap, if you would like to say. I'm technically a Zoomer, but I'm in the first year into the generation and I had been raised by millennial siblings. So my first experience with video games was the Super Nintendo. Though I grew up understanding the early and late 90s and experiencing a lot of those cultural parts of the 90s before the 2000s completely erased them. As a high schooler, I had one thing that no millennials really got until the very end of the generation, and that's phone games, baby. Let's get hip on that Flappy Bird. You won't catch me lacking on some Fruit Ninja. But you know what else started as a mobile game? Granblue Fantasy. It was a Japanese-specific mobile game, so it never got a release in America. But their company, Games, saw that many people in America were playing the Japanese version, so they made an English translation of the game, so people who put in all that effort to get the game would be able to keep all their data. That was very nice of them. But even then, the obvious love and popularity in Japan, Games just never totally committed to the full release of an English version of the game. You know what you can commit to though? Go ahead and smashing the subscribe button down below helps me out, and let's go ahead and get ourselves back into Granblue Fantasy. So time moved on and Granblue Fantasy stayed behind that language barrier that keeps all the normies away touching Japanese specific IP, like just a giant net that nobody wants to cross because there's bugs on the other side or something. And then Games got a taste of the limelight when A1 Pictures, wow, a sense of deja vu here for some reason, decided to work with Games to make an amazing anime franchise. Until, like a lot of A1 Pictures series they ended up going to another studio and the second season was given to MAPPA to work on. Along with a short manga produced a year prior, Granblue Fantasy was not only getting a spotlight at the big boys table, it was also being adapted for a larger audience, since typically manga and anime get adapted for an international audience and not just a Japanese one, which not only proved that the community for the game in Japan was huge, but gave them an opportunity to see the reception of an international audience outside of a translated English version of a Japanese game. And I think it went well overall. Personally, at least, I loved both seasons of the anime. Running from 2017 to 2020, I think it was a real well-animated and very well-paced anime that kept the source material while adding their own flavor and whimsy to the universe that really worked well. It was a very good fantasy story, and there were several tropes from the classic anime formula that actually works really well into the series that made me love watching the whole 28 episodes between season 1 and season 2, especially since season 2 went into COVID, so it was time well spent during the lockdown stuff here in the States and everywhere else in the world really. But then things cooled down for the series. The phone game was still in Japan only, and they were getting regular updates for that game, but the international audience was kind of left in the dark for any new content about Granblue Fantasy. Well, besides the Granblue fighter games that came out in 2020 and 2023, but they weren't nearly as popular internationally and didn't feel the itch of the grand adventures and fantasy that were really put out in the other materials and content that was made for the series. It was more of a filler game series to pad the company's bank account than actually to give us a sense of adventure and whimsy. And that was until our Lord's Day of January 31st, 2024. Thank you, Platinum Games Senpai.
And I love you, random citizen.
Granblue Fantasy Relink was released for everyone to enjoy. Like Japanese Santa passing out gifts on Christmas with a KFC drumstick in his mouth, my mouth was watering at the release of this game. First Palworld, and then Persona 3 Reload, and then we get this. Papa is eating good as of 2024. Now, Granblue Fantasy Relink is the classic JRPG styling with real-time battle systems, several characters with different game styles, and several side quests based on a bulletin board format to play different mission types. As you can tell, since Platinum Games, the creators of bangers such as Bayonetta and Nier Automata, were involved, the actual gameplay of the game was going to be amazing and responsive no matter what. And they are. Multiple playstyles feel very satisfying, and the weight behind attack combos make everything feel very fulfilling with the kind of battles inside of the game. The design of the environment and the characters are not only designed very well, but the bright, vibrant colors really capture the eye. It expresses a beautiful and fantastical world where every moment your eyes capturing the world inside the game so amazingly. From the shading to the color schemes, the game has such a mood for each area you explore, and every mission has its tone. The color scheme also perfectly complements the aesthetics of each creature and character. The Dem team obviously knew how to express tension, not only with this killer soundtrack that perfectly encapsulates the fantasy elements of the game, but the combo of the soundtrack with the amazing boss battles in the game really give you a high-octane experience being an adventurer on a mission. Along with the beautiful visuals, the UI was also very nicely developed and does not interfere with the experience of the story nor the world in any way, with incredibly designed bust art to accompany the health bar of each character. I feel like the only part of this game that really could use improvement at all is the story. I mean, it's alright, like there's nothing wrong with the story. It's just kind of like going on a car trip and stopping for food and the only places available are Burger King or Arby's. It gets the job done, but it's definitely no love affair. Like me and a double Western cheeseburger from Carl's Jr. at 2 a.m. But the story was cute. Nothing over the top, nothing super dramatic, honestly. It's a super straightforward, fun fantasy adventure story that felt more like an anime arc than really an ending swan song, if you will. But I think there's nothing wrong with that. It's obvious the game was made to put in the mindset that you're an adventurer on a fantasy adventure. Even letting you and your homies play together makes it feel like you wanted to be immersed into a world a lot more than making a story to cater to watching the character's story from a third-person perspective. When you create a story to curate to the characters, you get more of a Last of Us or a God of War. You don't feel like these characters as much as you feel like a story about these characters are unfolding before you. What's great about JRPGs is that Japan tries to make experiences where you get to feel like the main character. They want the story to feel like you can place yourself in a fantasy adventure or an adventure in general. It's actually why a lot of the Persona games, well, all the Persona games in fact, the main character doesn't talk. There is text options that you get to choose because they want you to feel more immersed as the character. On top of that, the co-op allows you and your friends to get to be a fantasy party together, which is regardless amazing. And I feel like they definitely nailed the immersion experience, even leaving the game feeling wide open to have more adventures added at some point. A big point of Granblue Fantasy is giving you the chance to see a story of a party of adventurers going out and risking their lives on fun and intense fantasy adventures. That's what the anime is about, that's what the mobile game's about, and that's what this game is about. I totally understand the hype for the game, and it's totally justified. It's a really strong contender for me for the JRPG of the world, and that's saying a lot since JRPGs are pretty niche, and it's just the beginning of the year. Would I recommend this game to everybody? Oh yeah, especially if you like RPGs, this is totally a game that will satisfy an itch for you. If not from the story, then by all means the gameplay and the boss battles will definitely keep you preoccupied for the length of the story, if not a bit longer than that. I think as a final note, I really appreciate this game isn't too long. It could be done within 10 hours or so if you're just busting through it for the story alone. Not all RPGs need to be 100+ hours, and I think of how high quality and how much love was put into this game shows that case exactly. Plus, the play cycle is still super fun, and I can't wait to see if they make more content for the IP, if they make a secondary story, if they make an expansion pack, whatever they're gonna do. I just think that they left it wide open enough for something new to come along to be attached to this game series. And it could be a long-standing game series if they really wanted to because of the way they made the wide open generic fantasy adventure, and they could change the tone each game, which would be amazing, which I think everyone would super dig a kind of game like that. But if you really want to get into this game, I definitely recommend buying it. I do appreciate everybody watching and make it this far. If you did make it this far, then go ahead and click one of my other videos. And as always, I'll see you next time.